Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. I have been a longtime fan of Bill Boggs for a long time. However, it's always a challenge being a fan of Bill Boggs for a long time because whenever you need to explain Bill Boggs to someone who's maybe from out of the New York area or someone who's just not familiar with his career for whatever reason, the difficulty is explaining who or what Bill Boggs is. And that's something I've had a tough time explaining because the guy is either the modern day equivalent of a Renaissance man or he simply can't keep a job. He's a 4-time Emmy winner. He's been a best-selling author. He's been a comedian. He's been a substitute teacher. He's been a producer. He's been a behind-the-scenes personality. He's been an on-air personality. He's interviewed presidents. He's interviewed music legends. And now he works with a talking dog. I am very, very pleased to welcome Emmy winner, journalist, comic, etc., and author of The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog and its sequel, Spike Unleashed, the one and only Bill Boggs. Bill, it's great to talk to you. Thanks for joining me on the radio.
I really appreciate it that we got people out there who are going to be keeping up. Hopefully, I can help keep them up for a while if they're tired. That was a wonderful introduction. I don't want to Jerry Lewis it here, but by overdoing it. But I really appreciate that introduction. In fact, I can't think of anything you left out. Did you insert things that I didn't do? It was really very good introduction.
So, Bill, folks may not know, folks that may remember you from Channel 5 in New York or Channel 4 in New York or any of the national stuff that you've done on PBS or elsewhere. They may not realize that you actually had one of the ways in which you got your start was actually as management, as a behind-the-scenes personality. Now, it's funny about the media business. I've noticed for a long time that it seems like whoever the on-air people are, they always want to be in management to call the shots, and a lot of the behind-the-scenes people want to be on air because the on-air folks get all the glory. Tell me about how you were the manager of this comedy team and how you made that transition from management to being on air. I think that was back in the 70s.
That was back in the 60s.
Gee.
All right, so first off, I'm an example. Bill Boggs is an example of a man who's been blessed and able to make his childhood dream come true. My mother told me that when I was a little boy, like 5 years old, I was walking around the house with a pencil interviewing people. I'm a product of radio initially, not just music radio, but talk shows on the radio, pretty much forgotten names like Art Linkletter, Arthur Godfrey, and so forth. And I wanted to be like the men on the radio. I just happened to end up on television. And the way I went to University of Pennsylvania, and I went to graduate school at Penn, the Annenberg School for Communication. Now, when I got out of this, my goal was somehow to get in show business. If I meet somebody and people say, "What do you do?" I just say, "I've been in show business," and that was my goal. But I wasn't particularly. I didn't have much money, and I had a small student loan. And one day the phone rang. It was this company, Armstrong Cork Company in Lancaster, PA. They make flooring products, ceiling products, and they were sort of recruiting me. They're hiring writers, right? So I went out and ended up. I couldn't believe the amount of money they were offering. It was great. So I took this job as a writer in the public relations department, and within a week, I realized I had made a crucial error. The job was unbelievably boring. I'd have to write speeches about bottle caps and stuff like this. While I was there, I remember one beautiful spring day, standing on my desk, looking at the window, because I was working in the basement setup, saying, "How do I get out of here?" So I had a very close friend from my days at Ocean City, New Jersey, named Jay Tarsis, who was one of the funniest people I've ever met. And I was in a comedy team myself in high school, in college, and I have a lifelong interest in comedy, right? So Jay has one daughter, Jamie, and a son on the way. And I said, "Look, why don't you regroup, come down here to Lancaster, you get really good pay, and you can just regroup and figure what you want to do." He was working for Allen Funt, $100 a week, and living in Coney Island, commuting into the city. So he came, he interviewed him, and he got this job. Now, to shorten the story, the guy in the cubicle next to him was a guy named Tom Patchett, whom I did not know. So one day, this is like one of those things, that life-changing days, I was walking down the hall, and Tom and Jay, Patchett and Tarsus, doing a comedy routine. It's very much in the spirit of like Mike Nichols and Elaine May, who were very, very popular at that time. So it's over, and they're doing it. A couple of secretaries are laughing away. I said, "What's that?" They explained, "Oh, we hate our jobs more than you do. We're writing comedy routines." I said, "Do another one." So they did this thing, had us all laughing about a toll taker on the Pennsylvania Turnpike. In the middle of this, I had a blinding revelation. If they're as good as I think they are, I'll be their agent. I ended up being a manager. I'll be their manager, and when things are going securely enough, we'll get out of Armstrong. 6 months later, I had them on the Merv Griffin TV show, and then shortly after that, Joey Bishop. I got them booked in colleges. I got them booked in these coffee houses, and they did extremely well. So anyway, so after about 3 years of this, I just remembered that my real goal was not to be behind the scenes. And my mother reminded me of that. "You sure you're happy with what you're doing?" "Yeah." I said, "You're pushing for the guys?" "Yeah." My mother said, "I thought you always wanted to be like have your own show." I said, "Yeah, true, I did." She said, "Don't forget that." And one thing led to another, and I was hired by in addition to managing the comedy team, I was hired by a local station in Philadelphia, and I continued to manage them. But then I went to High Point, North Carolina, to get with my own TV show, and they went to the West Coast, and they went from Bill Boggs managing Patchett and Tarsus from his home where he grew up on one black rotary phone to Bernie Brillstein, one of the biggest managers in show business. It was a very happy story for Patchett and Tarsus and me.
I love stories where everybody walks away a winner, and that certainly seems like one. At 30 minutes after the hour, this is The Other Side of Midnight. My guest is Bill Boggs. Bill Boggs has a couple of books out about a talking dog, not necessarily meant for children. We're going to get into that in a second. But Bill, as I was preparing for this interview, I went back and looked at a couple of interviews that you've done, so many of which are available on the internet, and people can check them out at billboggs.com. I saw that you actually
Bill Boggs TV.
Bill Boggs TV.
I have my own channel, Bill Boggs TV.
Well, I saw this this interview that you had done with Bing Crosby, which I'd never seen before, which I enjoyed immensely, not only because it's great to see Bing at that point in his career, but it was great to see him being so candid and forthcoming in a manner that I'm not used to seeing Bing in television interviews. I'm wondering if you could tell me about that experience. I have to think of all the interviews that you've done, which I'm imagining is thousands with all the various shows that you've done, that's got to stand out as a major highlight.
Yeah, I always like Bing. A lot of people don't even know who Bing Crosby was, but at one time, the biggest star in show business, he sold more records than anyone else up to that point. And he had television shows, acted in movies, won an Academy Award. And he was at the Uris Theater, which is now, I believe, the Gershwin Theater on Broadway, doing a 2-week run with his family, a lot of Christmas songs in it with December. And he got booked. And an interesting thing is candidness is a very good point. And I went in to see him in the makeup room, and I said, "Bing, I saw your show 2 nights ago. I really loved it. And he said, Bill, I need a little help. What thing? He said, we're not selling the tickets. Anything good you can do to help us, I'd appreciate. Never had a guest ask me that. It's always like, that's a quid pro quo, right? And so we just had this interview. I raved, because I love the show. I raved over the show. And he ended up sending me a 2-page letter thanking me. So he was extremely gracious to me.
Well, I can absolutely see that reflected in the interview. It seemed like you guys have an instant rapport. Out of all the other interviews that you've done, and I hate it when people ask me this question, but when you've done Midday Live with Bill Boggs, when you've done all these other various shows in various formats, what are I'm not going to ask you to pick your favorite, but what are the other interviews that stand out in your view as being particularly challenging or particularly interesting or for whatever reason somehow noteworthy?
Well, the right now on my YouTube channel, and actually being circulated on social media, there's an interview with Roy Cohn and Gore Vidal really going at each other, and this has gotten a tremendous amount of hits. I think that the interview I did with Frank Sinatra, which is the first time he was ever on a talk show, and he was the longest interview of his career. I was in November, the end of November, 75, same year as Bing. Anyway, Frank, and I met Frank at 4:00 in the morning at Caesar's Palace, Easter Sunday morning. Jilly Rizzo introduced us, his friend, and Jilly knew me from my association with Sammy Davis, which is a whole other story I'd love to tell you one night. Anyway, so Frank and I we connected, and at 4:00 in the morning, he knew that I was a huge fan. My mother had been a Bobby Soxer and so forth. And at the end of this 10-minute conversation, he said, Julie says you have a show on Channel 5 in New York. I said, yeah. He said, well, I don't want to promise anything, but I'm going to be in New York in September with Ella and Basie. Maybe I'll swing by and do your show. And what do you think I said, Frank?
You got me.
I said, Frank, I'm not asking for anything. He loved that. And I wasn't. And he pulled my hands down. He pulled me in close and looked at these cold ball eyes. He said, I know you're not asking. Maybe I'll come. And he did. And I got letters from pretty much the entire English-speaking world on, quote, how did you get Frank Sinatra on television? And the answer simply was, we just met.
That's extraordinary. I have to check out that Roy Cohn interview. I haven't seen that one.
Roy Cohn and Gore Vidal, yeah. And then I think the third one, I had a good 8-year run on the Food Network, which was one of my happiest working periods because I was there on at the very beginning of the Food Network. It was like the Wild West. I could shoot things with my own camera. And as time went by, it got slicker and slicker. And all the original people like David Rosengarten and Sarah Moulton and I all got replaced by younger people. And that hurt because I love that gig. But here's the story I love telling. It's totally true. It was sort of like a scam. I had invented the show called Bill Boggs Corner Table.
Right, I remember. It was terrific. I was going to ask you about that.
Bill Boggs Corner Table, all over the country. And so I ended up going to the best restaurants in America, eating for free with big-name celebrities, and being on television. And they paid me for that. So I like to joke that, yes, they paid me to have lunch with Sophia Loren, the great actress. I had some really good people on that. Martha Stewart and I, and just a whole bunch of people. Most of them are also on my YouTube channel.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Get ready for Universal Epic Universe, featuring the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, and Super Nintendo World. Now open at Universal Orlando Resort. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Psst, healthcare pros, word's out, and it's too good to keep quiet. Look, LinkedIn is revolutionizing job hunting, making it possible to search by specialty, shift preference, and salary. Endless scrolling is out. Whether it's a mental health therapist or dental hygienist, finding the perfect role is faster and easier than ever. Head to linkedin.com/healthcare and start your search today.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel or that white chocolate mocha. Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
No, it's terrific. If you're just tuning in, I'm Frank Morano. This is The Other Side of Midnight. We're talking with Bill Boggs, Emmy-winning interviewer, journalist, comic, best-selling author, you name it. It strikes me, though, in looking at a lot of these great interviews on your YouTube channel, it seems like you've done a much better job maintaining an archive of interviews and your work in general than other folks have. One of my great heroes was our friend Joe Franklin, and Joe always used to complain that a lot of the best interviews that he had done were never preserved because they used to just kind of tape over that day's tape to record the next show. Uncle Floyd, another guy who says a lot of the best work that he's done is just gone. When the fact that you've been able to maintain so many of your archives, is that a Bill Boggs thing or is that a circumstance thing?
I think that, I'm like a rat pack person, saving stuff. I would just say, make a tape of today's show. And they came in big 3/4 inch things. I had boxes and boxes of them. Believe me, not even close to even 20% of the shows actually did. I look back and say, why did I not ask for a tape of my interview with Muhammad Ali, like, for example, or Philippe Petit the morning after he walked across between the World Trade Center. So it just, I would ask for it, and then several years ago, like around 2007, I just set up this Bill Boggs TV YouTube channel, and I invested a lot in it to get all these tapes digitized. You know what I mean? But it is a nice I appreciate you saying that. It is a nice archive, and like you can type in my name, say Yul Brynner, the actor, and or Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York. It will come up. Anyway.
Yeah, to me, it's the internet at its best. The fact that you can use the internet as a resource to still be entertained by a lot of folks that aren't here anymore and still learn so much about folks from decades ago. You have also been so associated with the Friars Club over the years. The Friars Club is currently, it's kind of experiencing a bit of a lull, but it's got such an incredible history and such an incredible brand. What do you think the legacy of the Friars Club is to comedy, to entertainment, to New York?
I think that's a good question. Normally, I get a more negative question. What happened to the Friars?
Right, exactly. No. Really mine's more open-ended.
Yeah. I think that to be able to say, once upon a time in show business, there was a club called the Friars Club, founded in the early 1900s, that had as members some of the biggest stars in show business. Once upon a time, that existed.
I like that. I mean, I think that's as succinct and clear an answer as can be. One of the things people may not know about you, even folks that have followed your career a long time as an on-air personality, is that you were the executive producer of the Morton Downey Jr. show.
Yeah.
That may strike people as a little bit of an incongruous fit because you always came across as so nice and in your on-air presentation kind of non-controversial. And if there was a Morton Downey Jr. episode that didn't end up with someone hitting someone else physically, that was considered a boring episode. Give me the kind of the thumbnail version of your experience working with Morton Downey Jr. and what was Mort like when the cameras were off?
Well, I hope some of the people listening even remember Morton Downey Jr. The show went on the air about 1987, and behind it was a man named Bob Pittman, who one of the founders of MTV, and now he's president of iHeartRadio. Anyway, it was a local show out of Channel 9, WWOR, and it was really, the ratings were phenomenal, particularly with young male viewers. Downey was like people say that the Jerry Springer show or the Maury Povich show are direct descendants of the Morton Downey Jr. show. That's partly true and partly false. Those shows have a normal host and crazy guests. The Morton Downey Jr. show had a crazy host and normal guests. And we did a lot of wonderful, serious topics and issues, and it was the fastest, as Regis Philbin said, the fastest rise and fall in the history of television was Downey. So I got the job because I had left Philadelphia. I was doing another talk show called Time Out with Bill Boggs in Philadelphia. This was the year right after I left Midday. I took about half a year off, and then I got a job. And I felt like I was completely repeating myself, Frank. I had the Chippendales on. It was like the fourth time I had them on, considering Midday. And I'm in the middle of interviewing asking the same questions, and I'm with this greasy, shaved chest of one of the Chippendales. And I thought, maybe I should try something else for a while. And sure enough, Bob Pittman and his people knew I was a talk show host and knew I was a producer, and they offered me the job of being executive producer of the Morton Downey Jr. show, and I loved it. We had a really excellent staff, some of whom have gone on to do amazing things in show business.
And what about himself? What was Mort like when the cameras weren't running?
There's the late Chris Christopherson wrote a song called The Pilgrim that had the following lyrics. He's a walking contradiction, partly truth and partly fiction, taking every wrong direction on that lonely road back home. And that's what Mort was like. Sometimes he would tell you, I'm going to Italy for a couple of days, and I'm going to have an audience with the Pope. And we would figure he's just lying, because he would make up all kinds of stories. Sure enough, he comes back with an autographed picture of the Pope. So who knows? He was just a wild guy, very intelligent, a tremendous interviewer, and a photo recall, really great photo recall.
You were obviously doing this terrific show on PBS for a while called My Generation. That show ended, and you've chosen to focus on more literary pursuits rather than, launch another TV show. One of the books that we're talking about is The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog. It sounds like a children's book character, but it doesn't take folks long to figure that that's not the case. Who is Spike the Wonder Dog?
No, well, first off, My Generation was the last show I hosted. It was like 2017. And I thought, at my age, nobody's looking for me. You can stay on television and be older and older if you have an association. That could have happened with the Food Network, but they just wanted to have very, very young hosts. So My Generation just got canceled. It wasn't getting ratings. It was produced by AARP. And I was standing here in my apartment in New York thinking, you know what? I'm going to do something now that's completely in my control. I'm going to write satire. And so I had already written two other books, a love story that actually called At First Sight. This was years ago. And Renee Zellweger herself actually optioned the book for film, but nothing happened. And then I wrote a self-help book called Got What It Takes. Successful people reveal how they made it to the top, and that enabled me to go around the country as a motivational speaker. Public speaking is my strongest gift, I think, of whatever gifts I've been given. So I took the premise of the following thing. When I had the show in North Carolina, right before I came to New York for 3 years, it was called Southern Exposure with Bill Boggs. And on that show, I had an English Bull Terrier with a spot on his eye who got nicknamed Spike the Wonder Dog. And shortly before I had my big break to come to New York, right, Spike got killed by a drunk driver. It was horrible, horrible. I had this premise. What would have happened if Spike hadn't gotten killed, had come to New York in today's world, and became a huge media star, together with his owner, who would be a fictitious talk show host, somewhat based on me. And satire is exaggeration and ridicule. And instantly, as I started to write it, the voice of the dog came to me. He's not a talking dog like Brian on Family Guy,
right.
But because the conceit is that the conceit is that I have taken some form of a mini dose of the stuff from the mushrooms, and I'm sort of like lying in ABC a cot at ABC because they interviewed me, but I was too high to go home. So Spike is sitting there looking at me, and he got this drool coming down my mouth. So because he doesn't want me to be photographed like this and be on the cover of the Enquirer, National Enquirer, with Dying Bill's Last Wish, he goes over and he licks it off. And so he then has the psilocybin in his situation, his life, and we're somehow able to communicate together, and that's how the story begins. So Spike is telling me the story. He's not a talking dog like Brian with Stewie on Family Guy. He's telling me the story. And the first one, The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog, he starts out as kind of a puppy. He's not fully housebroken. And by the end of the second book, Spike Unleashed, which I consider the single best work of anything I've ever done in my life, he's a big TV star and has tremendous strength, and he has enemies and stuff. But it's satire. He speaks truth to power. He's a dog. It's like E.T. He's looking at us, our human behavior, in a way that we frequently don't look at it. And I just had the ability. I surprised myself with how facile I was with satire.
When you have a non-human narrator, it would seem like you're able to get away with things that you wouldn't be able to do if you had just a normal, regular human narrator.
You're a smart guy, Frank. That's absolutely the truth. I told Bill, I was out to see Bill Maher. Bill Maher was on the show that Richard Baker and I produced, a big national show, 121 markets, called Comedy Tonight, where it was just stand-up comedians. I was doing that while I was doing Midday. Anyway, so I was out to Bill Maher's show. He was on Comedy Tonight. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm writing this business book." He said, "You can get away with a tremendous amount with a dog talking to you." So you're a sharp guy to pick that up.
But needless to say, even though this is fictional, there are some real parallels between you, your career, and the characters in the book.
Oh, without question. It starts out very much based on my career, but it's on where I am with the dog. But it's by no means a memoir. When you're writing fiction, people will come into your mind who are based on the composite characters. Capote did this all the time, that most fiction writers do. And I don't know. There were things I wanted to get across about fame and what happens. And apparently people seem to like it. I mean, like The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog did very well. And then the next one, and they were just really the other one just came out last year, Spike Unleashed. I'm very, I just say to people, if you like reading and you like laughing, read the book. The single nicest and most frequent praise I've gotten from readers is, "I haven't laughed out loud reading a book in a long time," and I'm not exaggerating that. I would not say it if I hadn't heard it dozens and dozens of times.
Now, you alluded to Spike Unleashed being one of the best things you've ever done, one of the best things you've ever written. Do I need to read the first Spike book in order to enjoy the second one?
No, it's like season 2 of a series that you get caught up immediately in what it is. That's a good question, but yeah, I would these days if somebody wants a copy of the book, I just give them Spike Unleashed. There's more plotting in it rather than a series of adventures, and it's about 50 pages longer than the first book. But they're both I think they're both equally funny. It's just that there's more layered subplots in Spike Unleashed.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to checking that out. Bill
Let me
Boggs.
know what you think. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know I will. I'll give you an honest opinion. Are you concerned? And this is this is something that we've dealt with on the radio quite a bit, especially lately. But all of the areas where you've chosen to make a living, being an on-air personality, being a writer, even to some extent having a substitute teacher, there seems like there's a very real concern, a very real risk that all of those fields might be replaced by AI in the future. Are you concerned that in the future, everything that you've done might be replicated by a machine or a computer?
It's the first time you got me thinking about that, because I doubt if I'd be around when that would happen. I think you need really very stringent guidelines on AI. I was reading today in the Post about a man whose daughter died 7-8 years ago, and she has reappeared in AI as herself. And so the man was extremely upset. Just to stumble upon this. So he got in touch with the company, and they said, "Oh, that violates our standards," and they took it off. But I think we need pretty strict guardrails on that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where things go. Bill Boggs, it is always a treat to chat with you. I hope we can do this in studio sometime soon. Whatever people know you from, talk show host, interviewer, MC, philanthropist, you are a gifted storyteller, and that's reflected whenever I get to chat with you on the radio or elsewhere. Thank you so much, my friend.
You're wonderful, Frank. Thank you very much. You're a great interviewer. Thank you.
Thank you. Takes one to know one. So I will, from you, I will take that compliment very, very seriously. If you want to comment on any portion of my discussion with Bill Boggs, you're welcome to give me a call, 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. And if you want to check out the books by Bill Boggs, you can go to Amazon or wherever books are available. The Adventures of Spike the Wonder Dog and Spike Unleashed. And there are even a couple of Bill Boggs books that aren't Spike the Wonder Dog related that might be worth checking out. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.